They promised you that awakening would set you free, but they didn't tell you that before freedom comes fire. Freedom comes with fire. The fact that you will fall into yourself, into quiet, and into everything you've been trying to avoid is something that they did not tell you before you rose. They assured you that it would be light, but they failed to mention that light appears only after the breach has occurred. However, this is something that no one will ever tell you. The beginning of peace is not the beginning of spiritual awakening. Rather, it is the beginning of reckoning. This is a reckoning with everything that has not been healed, everything that is unconscious, and everything that you have buried deep within your soul and prayed would never come to light. However, it is awakening now, because awakening is not some brilliant climb into cosmic happiness. Rather, it is the death of illusion, the collapse of your false identity. A point in time when everything you have constructed in order to survive, including your masks, your roles, your perfection, and your stories, starts to break apart. Furthermore, beneath that breakdown, there's a stirring of something ancient, something holy, and something wounded. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And here you are, standing at the doorway of that darkness, asking, why does it still hurt? Why am I still carrying this pain, even after the awakening? The answer is that you have not healed what was awakened, even though you have experienced awakening. It was brought to light by the light, but the light does not make it better. You caught a glimpse of the person who was hiding behind the mask. You sensed the truth, and you saw the shadow. To see, however, is not the same thing as to integrate, and if you do not heal what has come to the surface, it will continue to plague you even more than it did before. Simply because you are now aware, your own being is aware. Also, the soul is unable to unknow what it already knows. As a result of the agony no longer being concealed by the cacophony of unconsciousness, it has become more personal and more penetrating. It is present, it is sharp, and it communicates with us through symbols, dreams, gut feelings, and emotional spirals that have the impression that they have no beginning or conclusion. In your sleep, it mutters to you, it pains in your body, it manifests itself in your relationships, it manifests itself in your silence, and it manifests itself in your want to flee. However, evasion is no longer effective, and numbness is no longer pleasant. Distractions that used to numb the pain now feel like poison to the person experiencing it. As a result, you are left with this unfiltered reality. Waking does not heal you. Rather, it reveals the areas of your life that require healing. And if you do not turn inward, if you do not face the wound, you will suffer for a longer period of time. This is not because you are being punished. Rather, your pain is attempting to become a teacher. Almost everyone breaks down at this point in the process. They are aware of the awakening, but they were not prepared for the torrent that follows. The emergence of the inner child who is yelling for love, the resurfacing of trauma that they have repressed for a long time, and the devastating realization that they have spent their entire life searching for wholeness in places that have only served to make them more fractured. And when the light goes out, the high is gone, and the spiritual honeymoon is over. They are left alone with the truth. This is not the truth of the universe with a capital T. Rather, it is the truth of their own humanity, their pain, their unfulfilled needs, and their shadow. With regard to this sacred destruction, they make a decision. The suffering is rebranded as progress, and some people pronounce themselves healed, while others choose to turn back. In order to avoid all of this, there are those who use love, light platitudes, and spiritual performance. Nevertheless, those who remain, those who sit in the pain, those who have the courage to declare, "This still hurts," and who are willing to feel every bit of it, are the ones who truly recover. And the process of healing, once it starts, does not seem like light. Rather, it feels like dying once more, but this time with awareness and reverence. A part of you laments the person you had to become in order to survive. The limits that you were never taught to maintain are the source of your fury. For the inner kid who was never allowed to cry, you give in and collapse. You finally come to terms with the fact that the suffering did not disappear when you awoke. Rather, it was merely given a voice, and that voice has been waiting for you to listen to it for the entirety of your life. Not to be silenced, not to be overridden, not to be explained away with psychological or spiritual concepts, but to be felt is the voice that you need to learn to sit with. Having the experience of experiencing the anger of the self that has been rejected, the sadness of the soul that has been denied, and the profound bone-level anguish of being unseen for such a long period of time that you have virtually vanished into your own performance. This is not about wallowing. Rather, it is about witnessing with presence, with truth, and with compassion that is acute enough to cut through every lie that you are told about what it takes to recover. Mostly due to the fact that healing is not a destination. It is not a fixed place when everything makes sense and there is no longer any pain. A relationship is necessary for healing. It is a relationship with your darkness, a relationship with your vulnerability, and a relationship with the sacred task of integration. Additionally, integration is not a smooth process. It is not always graceful. When you do this, it frequently appears like you are breaking down again, saying no to something that used to feel comfortable, walking away from identities that no longer fit, making room for fear, for bewilderment, and for quiet, and allowing the unknown to reside inside of you without trying to label it too quickly. You have to understand that the moment you opened your eyes, your mind opened the door, but the only person who can enter it is you. In addition, you are unable to bring everything with you. You are required to let go of things that are no longer true, regardless of how familiar they may be, how well they have protected you, or how much they may feel like a part of you. Because mending is not about adding more light. Rather, it is about making room for what was before buried in the darkness. Moreover, when you do this, when you choose to sit with the wound rather than run away from it, you start to comprehend something very important. The pain is not there to kill you. Rather, it is here to reveal who you are. The suffering is not a curse. Rather, it serves as a guide. This is a sign that there are parts of you that are still pleading for completeness. They're still hurting to be felt rather than fixed, and that are still yearning to be loved in their most natural and authentic form. However, we were not trained to stick with the discomfort. Rather, we were instructed to get away from it. We were instructed to conceal via showmanship, through silence, through spiritual superiority, through the suppression of it in the name of strength, and through the bypassing of it in the name of peace. However, serenity that takes the form of avoiding suffering is not peace. Rather, it is paralysis, and paralysis is not healing. Rather, it is abandonment that is disguised as a holy mask. This is what an unhealed spiritual awakening becomes, a fate you cannot escape, replaying itself through every relationship, every dream deferred, and every emotional spiral that pulls you back into the wound you refuse to face. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is what I mean when I say that. Awakening does not save you from your shadow. It introduces you to it. Your shadow, that neglected vault of your psyche, does not respond to more light. It responds to integration. It doesn't want to be erased. It wants to be seen. It wants to be included. It wants to be brought back into the circle of your being and told, you belong here, but this takes courage. Not the kind of courage that charges forward, but the kind that sits still, the kind that listens, the kind that allows truth to rise even when it shatters the identity you've built. The truth will shatter you, not to break you, but to free you. And what is the truth? The truth is you cannot spiritually awaken without emotionally awakening. You cannot ascend without descending. You cannot reclaim the self without first mourning every false version of you that you had to become to survive. And that mourning is brutal because it requires you to stop pretending, to stop performing healing, and start practicing honesty. You're still in pain, and that is okay. You are still grieving, and that is holy. You are still afraid, and that is human. The spiritual path was never intended to make you untouchable. It was intended to make you whole. However, wholeness does not mean that you're always calm, always wise, and always elevated above your humanity. Wholeness means that you are able to hold your mess without feeling ashamed. You are able to sit with your rage without causing harm. You are able to feel your loneliness without completely collapsing into despair. You're able to make room for everything that is real, not just what is comfortable. You are now permitted to feel. You are permitted to scream for the inner child who was never given the opportunity to be loud. You are permitted to cry for the version of yourself who carried the weight of everyone else's expectations. You are permitted to mourn the years that you spent pursuing a spiritual identity while ignoring your emotional truth. This is because genuine healing is not about overcoming pain. Rather, it is about delving into the body, into the memory, and into the breath that you held during every moment that you were told, "Don't feel that." Because all of it belongs here. All of it is sacred. Even your anger, even your numbness, even your confusion, they are not flaws. They are signals. Signals that something within you is still waiting to be healed, not judged, not exiled, not spiritualized, but met. And when you meet it, something changes. You stop looking for salvation in the sky. You start looking for presence in your own breath. You stop trying to escape the wound. You start learning its language. You stop shaming the fear. You begin asking it what it needs. And for the first time, you realize the pain is not here to be conquered. It is here to be cared for. You don't need more techniques. You need more tenderness. You don't need more rituals. You need more realness. You don't need more words. You need more willingness to I am present. I'm not leaving, even now, especially now. And maybe for the first time in your life, the parts of you that were exiled begin to believe it. They begin to soften, to emerge, to tremble in the light, unsure if it's safe to be held. And you, the awakened one, become the space that says, you are safe now. There is no need for you to pretense. You're not required to recover quickly. You don't have to prove anything to be loved. That is when the real healing begins, when you stop trying to fix the wound and start loving the one who carries it. That is when the pain begins to shift, not disappear, not vanish into some perfect version of you, but soften like winter giving way to spring, like a storm finally learning to rest in the arms of the ocean. Because pain is not asking to be exiled, it is asking to be integrated. And integration does not happen through understanding alone. It happens through embodiment. You don't heal by thinking your way through it. You heal by feeling your way home to the places you once abandoned, to the truths you once silenced, to the softness you once believed was too much for this world. And maybe it was, but not anymore, because you have changed. Because now you are strong enough to be soft. Now you're conscious enough to be kind. Now you are awake enough to face the very pain you once thought would destroy you. And that is everything. Because now the pain becomes sacred. Now the ache becomes intelligence. Now the emptiness becomes a doorway, not a void. And you walk through it not to find a new version of yourself, but to reclaim the parts of you that never stopped waiting. Waiting for you to stop reaching outside. Waiting for you to come back to the body. Waiting for you to say, yes, I will sit with you. I'm going to listen to your scream. Yes, I will hold what others told me to hide. Carl Jung understood this. He knew that transformation wasn't about rising above the pain, but descending into it. He knew that the self, the deep center of the psyche, does not awaken in the light alone. It awakens in the tension between opposites, between knowing and not knowing, between clarity and confusion, between collapse and courage. And you're living that tension now. You're not just waking up, you are becoming real. And realness hurts at first. It strips away what is false. It removes the performances. It tears the veil off your spiritual ego and reveals something terrifying, your humanity. And suddenly, that's not something to escape, it's something to honor. You no longer seek to be beyond this world. You seek to be fully here, in your body, in your breath, in your heartbreak, in your joy. Perfectly but truthfully, you stop striving for some untouchable peace. You begin making peace with the untouchable parts of yourself. The part that still cries in the dark, the part that still longs for connection, the part that still fears being seen, even as it aches to be witnessed. And in witnessing it, you begin to understand the pain you thought was the problem was always the portal. The trigger was the teacher, the wound was the wisdom, the breakdown was the breakthrough, but only if you stayed long enough to listen. Most people don't. Most people try to bypass it. They wrap it in light. They bury it in mantras. They run back to the illusion of being above it all. But you stayed. You remained. You burned in the fire until it no longer consumed you. It changed you, and now you are no longer afraid of your darkness. You're no longer afraid of your softness. You're no longer afraid of your story because you've stopped trying to rewrite it. You're learning to live it, to hold it, to speak from it, to walk forward not as someone who is healed, but as someone who is whole. And wholeness is the real awakening. Not a state of perfection, but a state of permission to be fully human, to be divinely flawed, to be completely here in all your tenderness, your silence, your sorrow, your strength. And this is how you know the healing is working. You no longer fear falling apart. You trust that whatever breaks will not be the end. It will be the next beginning. You trust the spiral. You trust the silence. You trust that the wound no longer owns you because you have chosen to love what it tried to hide. And love, real love, is the only medicine deep enough for this kind of pain. Not romantic love, not rescue, not fantasy, but the fierce, unconditional, unwavering love that rises from within you when you stop abandoning yourself. The love that says, I will not leave, not when it hurts, not when I'm afraid, not even when I feel like I'm breaking again, because I know now that this pain has a purpose, and that purpose is me. You are the purpose, not your titles, not your image, not your performance of peace. You, in your quiet, in your chaos, in the raw, unfiltered truth of being alive and awake and unfinished. You are not here to become someone better. You are here to become someone truer. You are not here to be perfect. You're here to be whole. And wholeness is messy. It is nonlinear. It is 1,000 tiny deaths and even more rebirths. And yes, it hurts, but now you know what to do with that pain. You hold it, you listen to it, you stop fearing it like a predator. You start meeting it like an old companion who came bearing messages your mind never dared speak aloud. You stop making the pain wrong. You stop needing to fix it. You begin to walk with it. You begin to honor it. And slowly it changes. It becomes a guide, a compass, a sacred whisper in the bones. This is the way. The way forward is not away from the pain. It's through it. It's beneath it. It's in the heart of it. Because spiritual awakening is not a finish line. It is a doorway, and healing is what walks you through. But you don't walk as the person you once were. You walk as the one who has faced their own shadow and stayed. You walk as the one who has touched their own brokenness and not turned away. You walk as the one who has looked into the mirror of their suffering and whispered, I love you anyway. That is power, not dominance, not certainty, not control. Power is presence. Power is softness that does not break. Power is rootedness in your body, your truth, your knowing, and the world will feel it. Not because you speak louder, but because you carry something different now. A calm that doesn't need explanation, a silence that doesn't beg to be filled, a depth that makes people pause. Not because they understand it, but because it reminds them of something they lost. You become that reminder. Not through perfection, but through embodiment. Through your willingness to feel what others run from, to name what others deny, to soften where others harden, to remain where others disappear. You are the return, the homecoming, the healing made flesh. And even when it hurts again, because it will, you no longer panic. You no longer retreat. You know the way now. You've walked through fire. You've listened to your ache. You've made peace with not knowing. And in that not knowing, you found something solid. You, not the version of you tried to build, but the version of you that was always there beneath the noise. The one you buried to be loved, the one you silenced to stay safe, the one you lost trying to be light all the time. You found them, and now you stay with them. That is healing, not a moment, not a milestone, but a commitment to stay, to listen, to love, to feel, to keep becoming without rushing the process or escaping the pain. And in that commitment, the pain no longer owns you The awakening no longer overwhelms you. The past no longer defines you. You are here, awake, whole, becoming, and that is enough. It always was.